this in the abbreviation for the whole thing in its entirety. And so that's what Jesus taught when the young man asked him, what are the two great commandments? And he gave him the Holy Shema. Well, the Holy Shema was the whole covenant. The Holy Shema represented the whole covenant. Even though, what is the Holy Shema? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, right? Hear, O Israel, Yah our Elohim is one Yah. That is the Holy Shema, which is the greatest of all commandments. But by him saying that, did not elude or make all the other commandments disappear. That's not what he's saying when he says that. Synecdoche, right? So synecdoche is like speaking of the whole thing in part. So instead of saying all of the commandments, he gives the Holy Shema. But the Holy Shema does not nullify all the commandments. Neither does the second one, because he says second one was what? Love thy neighbor as thyself. So if you fulfill the book of the law, you will love your neighbor as yourself. The fulfilling of it, I cannot fulfill, thank you, I cannot fulfill if I say I love my brother and I love my brother as myself, if I'm not true to his commandments, I can't be true into loving my brother as I love myself. By keeping his commandments, then I will love my brother as I love myself. Because love your brother as you love yourself is a synecdoche. Did I say that right? Synecdoche. Synecdoche. So a synecdoche is love thy neighbor as thyself. And what did James call it? What did he call it? He called it the royal. Didn't James say that? Love your neighbor as yourself. If you do that, you fulfill the royal law. So it's not excluding anything. It's that by fulfilling that, I will love my neighbor as I love myself. Because love your neighbor as you love yourself, we know where that's at, right? That's in Leviticus 19:18. So that is law. Loving your neighbor as you love yourself is law. But by me being a true worshiper, I'm going to come back here to John 4. Did I read? Okay, let's go to 4:23. Before we move on, John 4:23. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. You cannot worship without truth. So if you're not walking in truth, you're not worshiping. So you can come to church and praise him and go right outside and go to your car or go home and live a lie. So which one of those illustrations is a worshiper? You can praise him because everything that has breath is supposed to praise him. But who's a true worshiper? If you come into this place and say this is a place of worship, you have to turn that around and realize that when you go out of this place, that's when you start to worship. That's when you start to worship. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for true worshipers that's going to worship him spiritually. We'll get to the spiritual side. And in truth. Truth is the natural. That's the natural element of this, is the truth part of it. Because you cannot worship him and be dishonest, disloyal, deceiver, liar, cheater, rambler, fornicator, chasing men, chasing women illegally, stealing, robbery. All of those are natural things we do. That's the natural man. And Paul even said in his letters, he says, those who stole, what? Steal no more. Because that's a commandment. Thou shalt not steal is a commandment. So I just can't do it. Those are the natural things that puts me in truth and lets me know if I have truth or not. If you bear false witness, you're not living in truth. A true worshiper doesn't bear false witness. You can tell a true worshiper by the fruit on the tree. So you have the 9 fruit that every tree, if you say you're a tree and you bearing fruit, every tree should know the 9 fruit and run them off. How are you going to have a tree, and especially if you have a tree, and see, a lot of us used to be, we come from a lineage of agriculturalists and being agriculturals. Well, put that in my book. But we were agriculturalists or gardeners. We knew that. We knew how to plant seeds. We knew how to put seed in the ground. We knew how to water and plant and nurture. We knew how to grow. We knew how to harvest. We knew if we put in seeds in the ground for tomatoes and tomatoes didn't pop up, but all of a sudden carrots was off the bottom of the ground. Then, because I don't think carrots don't grow like tomatoes, but all of a sudden you think, wait a minute, did I plant tomato seeds? I thought for sure I planted tomato seeds. And then this comes up, because he even looked at Israel like that. He said, now didn't I put good seed? I know I did. I put good seed. What is this wild, branch that's growing up? Because that's what Israel was. They came up after he planted good seed, they came up like that. But nobody, if you had trees in your backyard, you could point to, that's a lemon tree, that's an orange tree, this is an apple tree. That back there in the corner, that's a cherry tree. And the reason why you could just easily point to it, because you can look at the tree and you could see the fruit that's growing on it. I know the difference between a lemon and a cherry. I can see the difference between a cherry tree and a lemon tree. I can see the difference between an olive tree and an apple tree. You could just see just by looking. So that's an olive tree over there. That's a grapevine. So how is it that walking with him and we don't even know the fruit? And a lot of people have to, wait a minute, because even since I said that, some of y'all already went to Galatians. You already, I know he gonna say it. Let me go to Galatians. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, temperance, meekness, or it goes faith, meekness, temperance. I got them all. Because you reading it or you looked at. We should know that right off the, I'm bearing love. I'm bearing joy. I'm bearing peace. Shalom. I'm bearing this on my tree. Gentleness. Goodness, I'm bearing long suffering, faith, meekness, temperance. I'm bearing that. That's fruit that those are some things we had to learn when we was going to Sunday school at a young age. We had to learn those things. Now I know now as you get older, your memory is not as sharp as it was when you were a teenager, in your 20s or 30s. We're not as sharp. And that's why he says iron's got to sharpen iron, because you're going to lose it after a while. If you ain't in this book and you ain't sharpening iron with somebody else, you're going to lose it after a while. We're human. That's what happens to us. But all of us, just like we know the difference between an orange tree and an apple tree, you should know the fruit that you're bearing. That's true. So if you don't have no walk of faith, you're not a true worshiper. You're not in truth. You're not in truth. If you're not meek, and meekness, you're dealing with the natural man. I'm not talking about, we want to make everything spiritual. No, you got to get natural now. Because you're in a human body. and you living every day, and you breathing his air, and that time clock is ticking. Because you're mortal and you're natural. So we have to know these things. I should know if I'm meek or not. It's how I live my life. It's my lifestyle. It's the fruit on my tree. I can't be a true worshiper and not have any faith. I can't be a true worshiper and not have love. My book teaches me that. It teaches me that. I can't have or be a true worshiper and I have no joy. And joy is not happiness. Joy is not happiness. Because you can be sad and depressed, heartbroken and everything, and still got joy. My world fell apart. I'm in tears and everything. I still got joy, though. There's something about that spirit inside me that produces that fruit of joy. And we'll see joy, whether you got any joy or not. We'll see it naturally. Because how many of us can see a spirit? You can't see a spirit. The only time you can see a spirit is what? When it what? When it manifests itself in something natural, something tangible, something innate. When we see it react on something in a vessel or something, then we see that spirit. So for me to try to be spiritual all the time and have no truth, then I'm not a true worshiper. It's almost like James said, show me your faith without works. I'll show you my faith. What? By my works. I ain't going to say a word. I ain't going to say a word. I want you to watch me. Watch how I live. Watch my life. Watch what I do. Watch where I go. Watch how I present my body, a living sacrifice. Let me show you my faith without saying a word. So there's some work there. You got to do something. Some folks are just so holy and so spiritual, and they so holy and they chopping folks up, killing folks. This is a holy knife in the back. I'm so holy, I'm so spiritual. You turn your back, and I tell you, you got to, man, get them knives out of my back. That's why some folks don't want to turn their back on nobody. You amongst friends. Yeah, but I heard what Zechariah said. You see these wounds in I was wounded in the house of what? What he said in Zechariah, when they looked at his marks in his hand, he said, yeah, this was how I was wounded in the house of my friends. I was wounded in the house of my friends. You got friends like that. I don't know if you got friends that's going to be wounding you like that. I don't know if I want them kind of friends. But sometimes we're in the midst of people, and that's where we got to be careful, where you're so spiritual, you're killing people. Hey, you can't, well, I'm a sin killer. You know, we teach against sin. Well, you ain't going to live a sinful life and have eternity with him. That ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. Because that's just denying the reason why he even came and the purpose for him coming, and then the reward that he said he's going to give. And the crown. And I know we look at the physical crown and put a crown on the head, but the crown that he's going to give us is eternal life. That's the crown that we get to wear. Some people say, yeah, it's a physical crown. Okay, I don't know, but the book teaches that the crown is eternal life. He uses metaphors, to define and give us an understanding of it. Because there's a lot of things about him we will not understand if he doesn't manifest himself to us. If there's some type of manifestation, we're not going to understand and we're not going to know him because he's spiritual. That's what I want to get to as we get down here. The hour cometh and now is when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. Verse 24, he says, God, or Elohim, is a spirit. He is a spirit. And they that worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Now, I wanted to give the illustration and try to give you a little background on in ancient times how they looked at their temples, their shrines, and excuse me, I got to be able to say the S's without whistling. Their shrines, and the ziggurat, and what that ziggurat represented, and how it was the ziggurat was like, okay, we want the God or the gods, we want them to come to earth. And for them to come to earth, they're going to come to earth at this high place, and it's a shrine. And people could not go, you couldn't go up to the top of these shrines and have a service. We're going to go up there and we're going to stand on the flag. We're going to clap our hands and we're going to lift our voices. And that's not how it was. It was a sacred place that was off limits because it was a place for the deity. It was a place for the deity. It was a place of instruction that they would receive instructions from the deity, and then that's what they would carry out. That's what they would do. And so it would determine through your life, it would determine who your deity or who you were meeting, whether it was Dagon, Ashtaroth, Baal, Chemosh, some of those other ones, Molech, and some of those other gods. Your worship then was determined by the lifestyle and the things that you did. And they even had gods of fertility. And coming out of Egypt, some of those ancient civilizations and stuff, they had gods of fertility. And so a lot of times around the shrine, around the temple, not in the temple, but around the temple, like on the steps or they would have, especially when they were worshiping the fertility god, is when they had these orgies. And they would just have orgies and stuff because that was the fertility god, and that was a part of their worship. They worship like that. And isn't that what Israel did when they came out of Egypt? Because even Joshua said, Moses said, there's noise in the camp. And Joshua says, yeah, what did Joshua say? It's the noise of war. So Moses says, no, that's not the noise of war that I hear. And when he got there, the people were naked. They were celebrating and everything because that was not uncommon to those other gods and those other nations, especially when they had their season of fertility and the practices that they would do. Even one of those gods, and Sister Walsh knows what I'm talking about, and it was, I read this book, I think I gave it to you too, Gerard read, it's Archaeology in the Old Testament. And one of their gods was a female god of fertility, and she had like 17 breasts. She had 17 breasts, But she was a fertility god, and that's how the seed was planted. It was supposed to be sensual and sexual, and it brought about these feasts, these festivities and stuff. And that's why he told in Leviticus 18, he says, of the practices and the ordinances of Egypt, what they did, where I'm bringing you out of, I don't want you to do that. And in the land where you're going, all their other gods, Canaan, I don't want you to be like them. And then it goes on and lists the sexual morality and how, this is what I want you to do if you're going to worship me. Because all these other nations and their practices, that's how they did it. So the worship unto those gods was not in the shrine where the deity was. Their worship was when they went to the camp, when they went to their lives, how they lived their lives and everything like that. So when he says, I'm looking for true worshipers that's going to worship me in spirit and in truth, the truth part, you are not a true worshiper if you're not naturally living the ordinances and the practices that he teaches his people. That's a true worshiper. He told, okay, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse number 6. Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse number 6. He says, for thou art an holy people unto Yah thy Elohim. Yah thy Elohim have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. How were they a holy people? How were they a holy people? Because of what he did. He separated them. I'm separating you from all the other people. That makes you holy. He goes on to tell them what he wants them to do as far as keeping the oath and to keep the covenant and his commandments. What is, when you look at keeping the oath, the covenant and the commandments, now you're dealing with natural things. The natural things that they did that separated them from all the other people. When he chose them as a nation and called them out, it was because of the work that he did that made them holy. The truth that they had to, or the life that they had to live and walking in the truth of this word is how they worshiped him. When they were obedient unto the teachings, that's how they worshiped him. For them to come in with tambourines and the stroke of the guitar and the drum beatings and the organ and the singing and the festive, spirit and all that, that was not worship. That's not what he's dealing with when he talks about worship. My worshipers are those that's going to faithfully walk in truth. So my life outside of the building determines if I'm a true worshiper. It's what I do outside here. I come here to get instruction and teachings, knowledge and understanding. They come here to get fed, which, like I said, is different from what in ancient times, because in ancient times you couldn't get to the shrine, you couldn't get to the temple. I was looking at, as I'm reading this book, going through this book, they had a picture of they kind of dug it up, and it resembled the tabernacle when Israel built the tabernacle. And within that tabernacle, we know the tabernacle, how it's structured and everything. But you had the altar, and then you had further back in the tabernacle. Anybody know what was further back in the tabernacle, which was a small room it was the holies of holies. And in this area in the back of the tabernacle, the holies of holies, who could go in there? And how many times? Once a year. Once a year in the holies of holies. It was off limits to everybody else. It was the holies of holies. He said, this is, even in the Ark of the Covenant, did not he say, this is where I'm going to meet you on the mercy seat? And the miraculous things that they seen when the smoke and the fire, and then when he appeared on the mercy seat and the smoke would go up, they would see the smoke going up from the tabernacle. They said that when Moses would go into the tabernacle, the cloud would cover the front door. Nobody could go in or out, and then he would come out, and so it was heavily guarded. The holies of holies was visited once a year. It was a pristine place. It was overlaid with gold. It was spectacular. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But you couldn't go in there because it was a sacred place for the deity or the Most High, his spirit, where his spirit would come and commune with man, to where man would get instruction. The high priest, before he went into the holies of holies, he had to do what? Offer a sacrifice and blood for what? Himself first. I got to offer blood and sacrifice for myself first before he could go into the holies of holies. So there was, you had to be right. And they, even at his garment, at the hem of his garment, down the garment, you had bells, and then they had like some kind of loop, or it explains it, but around the whole rim of the garment, and it was strategically around the rim of the garment, you had these bells. So when he went into the holies of holy, if he didn't cleanse his own sins first, and he'd go into the holies of holies, you didn't hear no bells ringing. And they would have to get a staff and then grab him out, because nobody could go in there. Nobody, it was off limits. It was a place for the deity, or the place for the Most High, a place for his spirit, to where he would meet man. Where he would meet man. And so other nations understood that, but the other nations did not have the Most High of Israel. They didn't have him as their, in Judges, also in, one good example is in the time of Eli. We say Eli, his name's Ali, but Eli, and the time that his sons, it was prophesied how his sons were going to die, and it finally happened, and Eli died. And in that war, they slain a lot of Israel. I think one battle was like 30,000, somewhere around. I don't know. I might have my numbers off. But then they took the Ark of the Covenant. They took the Ark of the Covenant, and when Eli heard about it, he heard that they took the Ark of the Covenant, that he lost his sons, and Israel fell in the battle. And he fell backwards and broke his neck, and he died. But they took the Ark of the Covenant, and it went to the Philistines. And then he struck the Philistines, all the men, and Dagon fell down before him one day. Then they picked him back up, the idol, they picked him back up, and the next day his head was cut off and his hands were cut off, and he was just a stump. And in Scripture it just says Dagon, but his hands and head. But if you go into the ancient and what they was talking about and everything, he was nothing but a stump. They just trimmed him down. If you seen like a stump coming out of the ground, that's about how he was. So he was just left of his torso, basically his torso. So the Ark of the Covenant now, then the Philistines, it was destroying the Philistines. So they said, let's get rid of it. Let's give it to, I forget who it was, Ashdod or somebody else. They gave it to them, or Ekhalon or something. And then their men start dying and everything. They said, no, you cursed us. Get rid of it. Who should we give it to? Let's give it to them of Gath or whatever. They sent it down to Gath. And those men, they lost all their men. They got struck with emeralds. That's what it says in the Bible and everything. And they says, oh, we got to get this. Just get it out of here. We don't want it anymore. Because that Ark of the Covenant represented deity coming to commune with man. Or the Most High of the heavens came to commune with man. And the power that it exuded was frightening to everybody around them, to where Israel was the envy of all the other nations. They were the envy. I mean, it's like, and even Nebuchadnezzar, we was kind of talking about Nebuchadnezzar and how Nebuchadnezzar went from the throne down to an animal. And for 7 years, and he came back, he says, ain't no God like the God of Israel. Y'all don't mess with him. You don't want to play around with him. But the power that it exuded to have a place where deity would meet with man. I mean, that was extremely powerful. All these other nations had that. The time of Elijah, in the time of Elijah. And he even met with some of these false prophets. I don't know how many at one time. And then he says, well, let's, you call on your God, your God, and I'll wait till you're done, and then I'm going to call on mine. I'm going to offer my sacrifices, and I'm going to call on mine. And so they called on their God, nothing happened. You know what they started doing? They started cutting themselves and calling out to their God. They wanted their deity to come and visit them, and he never did. So here comes Elijah, and he does what he does, and his sacrifice is accepted because the fire came down and took the sacrifice, swapped up all the blood and the water, and destroyed all those prophets. So it exuded a lot of power to be in a place where the deity of the heavens, the Most High, actually met with man. It was such a sacred thing that they felt that if they ever met him, they would die. It would be impossible for mortal man to live if they met with the Most High. Nobody has seen him and lived. Nobody. There has to be some kind of buffer, some kind of place, a medium where we can meet with him, but we can survive. I want to meet you, but I don't want to die. I mean, even Samson, when he met, Manoah, he thought for sure he was going to die, and there's some other ones who thought for sure they was going to die because they met they met a theophany, or it was actually a buffer. And Moses knew that if I ever, was in his presence, but he asked him, he says, can I see you? I want to see you. And he hit him in the cleft of the rock, in the cut out of the rock. He put Moses in the cut of the rock. And then it says his hinder part of his glory passed by him. And it lit him up. Lit him up like a fluorescent light, like today's time, LED light. I mean, he was lit up. You could see him from miles. I mean, he was so lit up when he came back to the camp, they was afraid of him. It was Moses, you got to cover your face. The people are afraid of you. He just seen the hinder part of his glory that passed by, not in his essence. Nobody in their essence can see our Father and live. The only way is through a buffer, to where he buffers himself, to where you can actually have any kind of communication or dialogue or intervention or any type of relationship. It has to be some way that he buffers himself. Otherwise, we could not. We'll never survive. We can't survive it. He's too pure. He's too excellent. He dwells in a light that nobody can approach. And I know we look up the heavens and all we see, and we say outer space is so dark, and it's just darkness, which is, that's just a realm or a story up in the heaven. But where he dwells, it ain't nothing but light. You can't even approach it. It's too bright. In our human form, there's no way we'd be able to approach him. So he has to give us a buffer. So in John, we were in John 4. Let's go to John 14. And John 14, and let's start with verse 20. John 14 and 20. And that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. So I want, as we go through this, and we understand that it's always been man's mission in life to meet the deity, or to know him, or to know a God, even from the time of Adam all the way up, to the forming of nations and everything. There was always a quest for man to meet deity or to know him or to have a relationship with him. It's always been that. It's always been that way. You're going to hear me say more things on how he declared the end from the beginning, because we read in Isaiah 46:10 that he declared the end from the beginning. So when you look at the end, it's reflective of the beginning. Or if I want to know the end, I can go back to the beginning. So I want to be able to draw the correlation between the beginning with Adam and the garden and Revelations 22, and how we see Revelations 22 and how it's described in Revelations 22 and how that goes back to the garden. Because in the garden, I'll just say this real quick, in the Garden of Eden, where Adam started and Eve, it was like a shrine or a temple. It was a place where Adam met the Most High. The garden was not a whole state, a whole big land. The garden was a place where he met the Most High. It talks about, the trees in the garden and the water that flows out. Well, when you're looking at the Garden of Eden, you go to Revelations 22 and you start to read about Revelations 22, you'll see the similarities of Revelations 22 and the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, because this earth was here and was populated before Adam. I don't want to get too much into that tonight, but it was populated, because it even talks about it in the prophets, and even it tells Adam and Eve that they had to replenish the earth. So how could Adam and Eve, the first man, how could it replenish? And then in Genesis chapter 5, it says, these are the generations of Adam. So he's starting with Adam now to reveal the whole generation. You and I here today are a generation of Adam, or of Adam. We are still a generation of Adam. And so I want to kind of draw some of the correlations between Revelation 22 and the Garden of Eden, and how you can see some of the similarities when it explains, the city, the trees, and the water that flows. And it's a place where now what does it say about the city? You don't need no sun because what? The Most High, he's going to light it up. He's going to light it up. It's going to be a place of habitation for him. It's going to be a place where he's going to habitate with those that, that will be able to be able to go in and out of that shrine, that sacred place. It even says they'll, there's gates to it, and we'll be able to go in and out. It says we'll be able to go in and out. So it's not the whole earth, but it's going to be sat here on the earth. And when you look at the height of it, which is the same as the breadth and the width, but if you look at the height of it, how high up it's going to be. And because a high place, a mountain or a high place, once you get to the top, that's where, you have this union, or this place where you have this interaction with the Most High. So the Garden of Eden, it talks about how the rivers flowed out of the Garden of Eden. And then you can trace where those rivers went, but that's not how big the garden was. It's just that that's where the rivers started and how they flowed out. The beauty of it, the trees and everything. And then you'll see that also in Revelation, and how the water is associated with that as well. But so it has always been man's mission in life, either to get to heaven, or to get heaven to what? Come to here, come to earth. And that's more of what Nimrod's Tower of Babel was. When you look at the Tower of Babel, it was a ziggurat. The Tower of Babel was a ziggurat. And so what they wanted to do was to place it and go up so high to where they could bring the deity to earth. and so that they could commune with deity here on earth. It was more of bringing heaven to earth than to take earth up into heaven. The purpose of building that was to get heaven here and to get the deity to be here on earth. And so that's why they built that ziggurat. But so it's always been man's mission in life because it's innate in man. It's innate in man to know that there is a higher power. You just know that. You know that there's more to life than me. I mean, there's more there's an intelligence around here I can't fully grasp or understand, but I know it's here. There's something here that is beyond my comprehension. There's just something here that's beyond my mobility. There's something here that that I just know that there's more than what I see, than what I understand, what I can comprehend. There's more than that. And that understanding that the mission and purpose of man has always been try to get to deity, try to get to the Most High, try to get to heaven. That's been the purpose, because they know that there's more there than what they presently see with the eye. A lot of these nations that were here in times past, there was a lot of knowledge and wisdom that they had. We think that, oh, we're so far advanced, and it does say knowledge will increase, but don't think those people didn't have knowledge or wisdom, because they certainly did. It's just that we are growing. In fact, and this is troubling to me, because we're looking at generations that have no interest in knowledge or wisdom. We have generations coming, they have no interest in knowledge. Don't you want to go to school? Don't you want to be taught? Don't you want to sit in an arena to where you can hear teaching and be around people that speak intelligently, that can speak about things that, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want to listen to DaBaby. I want to listen to, all this rap. I want to listen to all this stuff. We're losing generations, and we think we're so advanced, but we're losing our children, and we're losing generations. Knowledge is something that should be sought after. It should be a pursuit. Our children should want to go to school. They should want to learn. I want to know more. Where do we get this? I want to be a dummy. Well, they got books for dummies. Well, they do. What do they call it? Electronics for dummies, and they got all kind of. You seen those books? Yeah. RN. Okay, RN test for dummies. I mean, yeah, they've got all. So our kids say they got books for dummies. I don't want to read. I'll catch the movie. that mentality. We're losing. We're losing, and we're going to get smashed. We are. There should be a search. We used to have it, search for truth. There should be a search for it. I want to know more. Our young people, our children, our sons and daughters, I want to know more. I don't want to be a dummy. I don't want to be ignorant. I'm sorry, I don't want to be ignorant. Knowledge is appealing. Wisdom is appealing. Read Proverbs. I mean, it's something that it should inspire. Give me some instruction. Let me learn wisdom. Let me learn knowledge. James tells us you ain't got wisdom because you don't even ask for it. Because all you got to do is ask for it and begin that pursuit. And sometimes we look at these paths, oh, they're so dumb. No, we're dumb. Because we can build on what they know and advance even further. But for some reason or another, being knowledgeable and being intelligent is not cool. That's a trick of the adversary. I'm sorry. That is a trick. That is a trick. He said, my people are destroyed. Lack of knowledge. They don't want to know about me. My pursuit, and everybody can't do this because everybody's not a teacher, but my pursuit on knowing him has drawn me to other books and peripheral books to learn more about the people, the times, and what they practice, which brings out a broader understanding and enlightenment to what I have already. And for any of us not to want to know anything, I want to be a dummy all my life. All right, if that's what you want, you know, a lot of times you get what you want out of life. If you don't want to learn nothing, our children should be avid readers. They should be able to read and write. And I know we don't do any writing anymore. We used to have to write. We have to write out our work. We used to have to write reports. We had to write. All it is now is coding. Folks, can you write, not code, but can you write me a letter? Write a letter? What is he talking about? What age are you from? We don't write letters. Everything's coded now. And we forget we don't have the ability. I don't even think they offer cursive writing anymore. It's printing, and then you go from printing to coding. As long as you know the QWERTY board, he's good to go. Let's advance him to the next class. Why? He knows a QWERTY board. He knows how to type. He knows how to code. And we just, but there should be a pursuit for knowledge. Okay, my time is almost up. But so he says, where am I at? Verse number 21, 41. He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father. And I will love him and will manifest myself to him. Now, as we're reading this, with the pursuit that man has and the inability of hosting or being acquainted or seeing deity would kill us. We could not survive in his presence. Unless, of course, he makes a buffer or he what? Manifests himself. If he manifests himself or he makes a buffer, that's my engagement. Because otherwise, I cannot get in his realm where he is. So he says, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him. Judas saith unto him, not Iscariot, Master, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself unto us and not unto the world? Verse 23, Jesus answered and said unto him, if a man love me, he will keep my words. Now this is where, we want to worship him in spirit and in truth. If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him. And something that man has been pursuing all their life, even generations, nations, even to where they built shrines and temples and sacred places because they wanted to meet with deity. The whole pursuit of man is so that they can host or meet deity, bring heaven to earth. So what does Jesus say? And we will come unto him and make our abode with him. That's pretty tall. That's a very profound statement. And the only way that he could make his abode with us is through a manifestation or a buffer. Otherwise, the pureness of Elohim would blow us up. Our human flesh is just all over the place. Adam splitting, and they have to leave his presence because of his pristine glory and his essence and his beauty and his pureness and his power. There's no way. There's no way. So he makes a buffer. And even when it says in Hebrews, the 10th chapter, he said, a body was made for me. A body was prepared for him. And he says, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it's written of me. And so that manifestation was the very flesh or a body that was prepared for him, that he could manifest himself to us. So if he's going to manifest himself to us, and he spent equity when he made a body without the aid of a male sperm. And he made a body, and he put his spirit in that body, the equity that he has, just so he can commune with us, just so he can be with us, just so we can be with him. Something that has been sought out for ages, and I'm talking about millenniums and ages, and what man has always done to get to that high place to where they could be with deity or be with the Most High or be with their God. Yes.
I'm just trying to process the way you're framing this. I mean, and if I were a new believer or an unbeliever, I'd almost think that you are describing a Trinity. I mean, well, not a Trinity, but because you said that he wanted to commune with us, right? So he created a body to put his spirit in so that he could communicate with us, right? I mean, and I have enough word in it for me to know that there's what one God, and then Jesus, the Son of God. But it's not quite a Trinity, but the way I'm hearing it, it could be misunderstood, right? I mean, that you are describing two different deities in a sense.
Well, I mean, Christ himself was the Son, right? So he we have to, the way we connect to him is through his humanity.
Right, but aside from what you just said right now, just a second, the way you built it and described it and framed it, I mean, because you said he wanted to commune, right? And then so we couldn't be in his presence because, of course, the human body could not withstand that.
Right,
so,
right.
And then I know you described how Moshe just got the tail end of his glory and they just lit them all up, right?
Right.
And so then in order for him to, I'm thinking, this is on the intellectual level, right?
Uh-huh.
I know what you're saying. I know. But what I'm saying is if somebody else were to hear it who's not seasoned, who has the ability to kind of cipher through the essence of what you're saying, they might be confused. They might think that you're saying that God himself put himself into a flesh. So he's it's an expression of who he is. It's not Jesus, it's God in that human flesh of Jesus. Because essentially that's what, if I were to just not filter through it, that's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. And then what let's go to, is it Timothy? Is it, First Timothy? Or it must be, First Timothy. 1 Timothy 3:16. So how his communion with his nation of Israel and how he met them was through what? The Spirit, yeah, but how did he meet with Moshe? How did he meet with them? How did he first met with him through the burning bush, right? Okay. Then he wanted a place where he could come down and meet with the people and be in the camp of the people. And so what did he tell them to do? No, yeah, kind of. But Holies of Holies was where? In the tabernacle. So you had the tabernacle, and within the tabernacle in the back, you had the holies of holy. This is where deity or the Most High met with man. So when he was at the nation of Israel, he met with them through the tabernacle and through the Ark of the Covenant. So that was Israel as a nation. Well, Israel couldn't hold up to their end of the bargain. They broke it, anyway. So what does he do this time? Well, he said, I'm going to do something better than what I did the first time. When I was with you in the tabernacle, now I'm making a tabernacle of human flesh so that I can come and dwell with you. So in the nation of Israel, when they came out of Egypt as a nation, and he desired to be with his nation, he met his people through the tabernacle and through the Ark of the Covenant. But everybody couldn't even touch the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, everybody didn't see the Ark of the Covenant. Everybody didn't get into the tabernacle in the wilderness. And nobody got into the holies of holy. So that's what he did in the old economy. Now in the new economy, now I'm, making a human body and I'm putting my spirit in that body. Now I can tabernacle with you. No. Oh, no. I mean, Solomon said the heavens of heaven can't contain you. So how is a body going to contain him? But his spirit was present in him because he didn't have an earthly father. And so his spirit was imparted into him. It says he had the spirit without measure. We get it in a measure, and we're negligent with what we get. But he had it without measure. And so we see his whole lifestyle. But he came to tabernacle with us. He came to tabernacle with us. And the whole pursuit, I mean, this is how he looks at what he did. We have the Feast of Tabernacles now, and a lot of people, they take it or leave it. A lot of people don't even know about it. We have generations that don't even know about it. But in when he sets up his kingdom here, and when he on the new heaven and the new earth, which actually he's just going to meld a lot of things and reinforce what he has here. But anyway, if you jive around with his tabernacle and his Feast of Tabernacles, if you say, I ain't going up to Jerusalem for that, I ain't keeping no tabernacles, what's going to happen? It talks about the plague in Zechariah. Yeah, you're going to have a total meltdown. You say you ain't going to, I ain't keeping no tabernacle. Who's he talking tabernacle? I ain't keeping no tabernacle. And they're going to be hit with the plague. That's how serious he takes it. And even in Revelations, it says he came and tabernacled with man. He didn't have to do it, but that's something that he did. So when we see a manifestation, we see his manifestation, and it says Jesus was anointed above all his fellows, which means Moses and David and Elijah and the prophets. They don't have the shine on them like Christ. He was anointed above all his fellows. He was the Son. He was given all power in heaven and earth. He's still serving in that sonship where the manifestation of the Most High is given to us through his Son. So we have like it says here, without controversy. Is that up here? Without controversy. Great is the mystery of godliness. Elohim was manifest in the flesh. That manifestation of him is Jesus Christ. That's the manifestation. He was justified in the spirit because his spirit now, the justification of his spirit is, could Christ have sinned? In his human part, he could. As a human being. He even said in the Garden of Gethsemane, if it be possible. He said that after he told Pilate, or no, that was before Pilate, I'm sorry. But in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, which is his human will, but thy will be done. If he could not have sinned, Satan would have never tempted him. Because Elohim can't be tempted with sin. You can't tempt Elohim with sin. Well, you can't do that. You can't. Sin is not even in his presence. So as Christ, he was tempted. And not only tempted by the devil, but he was tempted in all points like as we are. Elohim cannot be tempted with sin. So as a man, could he have sinned as a man? The possibility was there to fail. He was like the first Adam. Now, the first Adam was created immortal. It wasn't, mortality didn't say, he didn't become immortal until he transgressed. But he was made and cut and built to be eternal, to have eternal life. But when he transgressed, he became mortal. So Christ, what did Christ say? No man takes my life. You ain't gonna take my life, but I'll lay it down. He says, I have the power to lay it down and the power to pick it back up again. He said, this commandment I've received from my Father. So his Father empowered him to where he could lay down his life, pick it back up again. No man was going to take it. He would not have died if sin was not imputed to him. So he was justified in the Spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and received up into glory. Seen of angels because the Most High, Elohim in heaven, is an omnipresent, in our sense, invisible. So the angels in heaven, I mean, they're around, and we say throne. It's not like a chair where you sit on a throne like that. When he says the heaven is his throne, that's his dwelling place, and we don't know how big that is. That's why Solomon said the heavens of heavens can't contain you. How are we going to make a building that you're going to, stay in? So where he resides and where he lives is his throne, and it's a place of judgment, and it's a place of justice, a place of equity, like he says, all that. It's a place of all of that, purity and perfection. So the angels, it says he's seen of the angels, not only the angels in heaven, but you know what other angels seen him? The fallen ones. Yeah, the ones who have fallen, because when Satan got kicked out of heaven, a third of the heavenly host was kicked out with them. So those angels seen him. It even says he went to preach to the spirits in prison after his death. So those angels, they seen him. And so seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world, received up into glory. So that was his manifestation. In order for us to have the dwelling or the abode in the Old Testament, it was, or we say, but in the time of Israel, when they were a nation, a thriving nation, it was the tabernacle and the ark of the covenant is where he dwelled. But especially when he does that new thing, see, when Christ comes and makes his abode with us, there's things that we should know even if it's not taught us. There's some things about righteousness, godliness, and holiness and living right that I just know. Why? Because it's been written on my heart. I know there's some things in our spirit we should just know what's wrong. You don't have to teach me that. I know that ain't right. Instead of like some people, well, I want to test it and see. I want to test it. I want to see, wait, is this right or not? If you, a lot of times, not all the times, because of being taught correctly, a lot of times, but not all the time, if you have to question if something's right or not, probably shouldn't do it. Just don't do it. because he writes it on your heart. You should know what's right. Your conscience will scream out, oh, don't do that. And then I'm going to ask and see if that's okay for me to do. And so we want to go and ask a man. They might know, might not know. And if your spirit is screaming out, don't do it, you better not do it. And then start to study the book and everything. So I don't know. I don't know if that cleared up or not. But I'm trying to build it to where, because we're not, the only way we're going to commune and see him and worship, it has to be through a manifestation. Otherwise, we'll never know him. If he doesn't manifest himself to us, we'll never know him. And it's been the pursuit of man since the garden to find that mountain, that high place that's sacred to where deity or the Most High dwells. They just went after other gods. Yes. Yeah, because he was the Word made flesh, and John said, we seen him and we handled him. They had that, like how we know one another, to where they could talk to him, probably kidded around with them times. They laughed. Hey, man, we handled, this was the Word. We didn't know what we had. And people don't know what they have today. And yes. The world unto himself. Yeah. Is that in Thessalonians or in Corinth? Somewhere, maybe it's in Corinthians, but yeah. Out of him was in Christ manifesting himself unto the world. So that's the only way. If there's not a manifestation of him, we don't see him. We don't have no relationship with him. There has to be a manifestation because we cannot survive or live if we've seen him without a manifestation. We're not built that way. We're not cut that way. It would consume us. We'd be obliterated. So he manifests himself. And he manifests himself through his Son. And then, like it says in John, this is what I want to finish up, John 14:23. And he says, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. So here we have something that has been sought after all throughout humanity, the generations of Adam from Genesis chapter 5, these are the generations of Adam, all the way to today, something that has been sought after by mankind to commune with the all-powerful one, the one that has all power, the deity. And Christ says, well, through this manifestation, we're going to come make our abode with you. We're going to reside. And how does he reside? He resides in us through his Spirit, and it's manifested through the truth that we live, the life that we live. So if he's manifested himself, or if he's abiding in me when you see the truth. He says, you can't worship me without spirit and truth. We're not spirit beings. We have a spirit in us, but we're more natural than spiritual, even though we do have a spirit within us. But you can't see the spiritual without seeing the natural, because we can't see a spirit. The only way I know you guys are alive and you have a spirit in you is I see it, the eyes, the expression, the movement, the head, and they have a spirit. Now you get somebody in here that their eyes are diluted or dilated, or they're sitting there and they're like inanimate, like the pew or something. Man, they ain't no spirit in that person. They gone, man. They start to rigor mortis set in. There ain't no spirit in that person. But we see the spirit through the natural. That's how we see the spirit. So that's why he says, he's looking for those kind of worshipers that's going to worship him in spirit and truth. So he comes and he makes his abode with us. So by him making his abode with us, if I'm not walking in truth, I'm not worshiping. How is he going to make his abode in me and I'm not in truth? I'm not a worshiper. I go to church once a week. I go to church 3 times. We go to church 5 days a week. I don't mean, you know, your worship is the truth that you live. It's knowing truth and living in truth. We should have a pursuit for truth. I want to be in truth. And that's manifested through the light. What we have is something that mankind has always searched for. And we're negligent with it. And that's how he said, how are you going to escape if you neglect this? And a lot of us, we don't have the maturity level. We don't have the understanding. We don't know the power that we can exude, that can exude through us. How can you be conquered by anything? That's why Paul says we're more than conquerors. How can you be conquered by anything when they're making their abode with you? How can you be conquered? You mean something can conquer the Most High and His Son? You're telling me something can conquer. Death couldn't conquer Christ. He laid His life down and got back up. What do we fear most? We fear death. Out of everything in this life, we fear death. He conquered that. So why would we fear people? Jesus even said, don't fear him that can destroy the body, but fear him that can destroy both body and soul. Because people can destroy the body, but not your soul. But we have fear of all kinds of things, and we don't know the power that we exude. We should overcome everything in this life. We victorious in everything. A lot of times we're beaten down by cares of life, oppression, depression, setbacks, disappointments, heartache, family, kids, parents, siblings, economy, government, education, corporate America. You name it. We let all this stuff conquer us. And none of that should conquer us. Nothing. The power that we exude. Okay, it's 9/11. It's 9/11. Nine 911. All right. So I'm gonna be saying more. So keep your questions if you got them. Keep your questions. That was a good question, and I'm trying to build it to where so where it's really clear, even for a newcomer. For a newcomer, somebody, that's the first time I heard that, but they can see clearly. But a lot of times we don't see it clearly when we first hear it. Not that you haven't heard it first, but I'm talking about somebody who could be coming for the first time. They're not going to have I didn't have a revelation of who Jesus Christ was for years. For years. Doesn't mean you can't be saved. You can be born of the water and spirit, but you put his yoke on, and he says, you learn of me now. You learn of me. So it's a walk. It's a progressive walk with him. So you can be saved, but really not know who Jesus Christ is. But if I want eternal life, I got to know who he is. So in my walk with him, it has to be revealed. Revelation has to come, my walk with him. Because we don't want to be those people that when they see him, they're going to mourn. Because it says all the tribes of the earth are going to mourn when they see him. Now for us, it should be joyous. I'll know it's him. I don't know what he looks like, but I know it's him because when I see him, I'm going to be like him. I'm going to see him as he is. So if somebody shines a light in the sky and say that's him and I'm not changed, that ain't him. That ain't him. Because when we see him, we're going to be like him. We'll see him as he is, which means there's a change that's going to happen. And Paul says it happens in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. It's going to happen just like that. Mortal, got to put off this how does he say it? This mortal must put on immortality. This terrestrial must put on the celestial. It has to, and he says it's going to happen instantly. When we see him, we're going to be like him. We're going to see him as he is. And we're going to be caught up to him where he's at. We're going to get caught up to him. And then we'll be with him forever. So, okay, any questions? Keep the question coming. There'll be more as we go on about the growth in him, and there'll just be more. We should want to know more. And yeah, pray for me. I got to be in the Brotherhood Huddle Friday, and I'm still trying to as we get into the huddle. I really need to start writing and building the outline.